we not pay this to these people and, bring those benefits to us, to the hardworking Americans.
Vice President Harris is campaigning in several blue wall suburban battleground states, joined by anti-Trump former Republican Representative Liz Cheney, who vowed to do everything she can to prevent Trump from returning to power.
I believe that every one of us in this election has a duty and an obligation to do what we know is right for the country, and that's to support Vice President Harris.
But just 4 years ago, in the summer of 2020, Cheney said this about Harris.
It's very clear. She is a radical liberal. I do think the American people are going to take a look at this record and realize she is very much a radical liberal.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham says he's disgusted by Cheney.
To every Republican supporting her, what are you doing? You're supporting the most radical nominee in the history of American politics. I can't take 4 more years of this.
All right.
When you support her, you're supporting 4 more years of garbage politics.
Artificial intelligence looks to be one of the most beneficial technological advances in history, but it has a dark side that can be just as damaging. Steve Jordahl looks at one of the misuses of AI that is ruining lives.
For as long as there's been an internet and texting, naive and foolish teens and younger kids have been sharing intimate images that they think will be kept private. Artificial intelligence can now include perfectly innocent kids that have never shared an inappropriate image in their lives. Elliston Berry told her story to a congressional panel recently.
I was 14 years old when I was violated all over social media. Photos were circulating social media. Pictures from a past Instagram post with a nude body created by an AI app upon mine.
They're called non-consensual intimate images, and they can ruin a child's life.
Fear, shock, disgust, and disbelief were some of the many emotions that filled my head in that moment. Every day, I will live in fear that these photos will resurface or someone could easily recreate.
Chase Capo of Bible Chat AI says families need to teach their kids about the dangers of the internet early and often.
Being aware, talking about artificial intelligence, not only with your church, but with your family, and making it a routine part of family conversation.
States are starting to put laws on the books to make the creation of non-consensual intimate images illegal, but someone still needs to be there to pick up the pieces of broken lives like Elliston's.
God help us and our culture. It's disgusting and tragic. We're using AI to maybe equip pastors who don't know how to address this conversation to an audience of 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
The U.S. is launching an investigation following the online leak of classified U.S. intelligence documents related to Israel's intentions to retaliate against Iran. Rich Edson with more.
As the Israeli military readies a retaliatory attack for Iran's massive ballistic missile barrage on Israel earlier this month, highly classified U.S. intelligence on Israel's preparations have ended up online. The New York Times reports these compromised documents detail recent Israeli exercises and weapons deployments to potentially prepare for an Iranian response.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty P.
Did you know that what happens in your state legislature affects your daily life, liberty, and property just as much as what happens in the White House? Maybe even more. How will you decide which down-ballot candidates deserve your vote on November the 5th? Resist being swayed by emotional campaign ads and sound bites. Visit iVoter Guide for the facts about the state legislative candidates on your ballot so that you can think for yourself. Election Day is Tuesday, November the 5th. Vote wisely with iVoterGuide.com. That's iVoterGuide.com.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman today. Let's see. Tim's out. Wesley's out. Fred Jackson is out. Ray Pritchard is out. So I really had to scrape the bottom of the barrel and invite Tony Vitagliano back on. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning. Good to be back.
Tony is my son, and he's very knowledgeable. I think if you've heard him on before, folks, we're trying to build our bench. Okay, so Tony's like our
I'm deep in the bench.
He's our utility infielder. When we got a lot of people out, we go, Tony, whatever you're doing, drop it and come on the air. So anyway, Tony was available Thanks for being on. And then Chris Woodward, of course, our news guy today.
Good morning.
At least for the first hour. He's a regular. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Steve will be here, if the Lord tarries, in the next hour.
Yeah, folks, this is Chris's. Chris says this.
No man knoweth the hour.
That's right. He says, if the Lord tarries. And, in fact, he had devotions this morning before the staff and managed to work that in.
I did.
So if the Lord tarries, it's
I'm in the process
right there in the Bible.
Keep watching the show on Facebook or the stream because I'm in the process of putting together a shirt that says, if the Lord tarries.
If the Lord tarries. You're in the process
if
of putting
the Lord tarries, I will make that and wear it on this show.
Well, you certainly have the spirit of it. What do you mean you're in the process of making one?
I gotta like buy the T-shirt and then use the Cricut machine.
Knitting the fabric.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna make it.
You're gonna make it. So you're in the process of thinking about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have it in my head. I have a plan.
I've always said never underestimate the importance of planning. Mm-hmm. I try to tell my wife that during the summer when she wants me to do some yard work. I tell her from my recliner, never underestimate the importance of planning out what you're going to do next Saturday.
Write that down.
Yeah, write that down. All right, Chris, what is going I do want to say what is going on in America?
Yes.
But there's more than one way to answer that question. So what's your top news story?
We are 2 weeks away from the presidential election. You might have heard about that. We talk about it from time to time on this here program.
Yep.
Yesterday, we spent a lot of time on the show talking about polling data, specifically in battleground states where news outlets like Real Clear Politics seem to think that Donald Trump is leading Kamala Harris when it comes to the important battleground states. Matter of fact, Real Clear Politics thinks that if the election were today, Trump would win the election based on the Electoral College vote. We have a ton of clips today to talk about a number of things involving the election. But for a minute, I want to take some time, and for a moment, I want to take some time and go over some stuff that both candidates said yesterday on the campaign trail. Let's begin with this one. One of the things that former President Donald Trump has long said is that if I'm elected and brought back into the White House, I'm going to do away with things like the gender manipulation of minors, and we're not going to have males and female sports. Those are big issues that we have long covered on AFN.net. And to prove that Donald Trump did say this, I've got some audio. Who, by the way, he's not a fan of critical race theory or CRT either. Clip 1.
On day one, I will sign an executive order banning schools from promoting critical race theory or transgender insanity. I will keep men out of women's sports. I will sign a law banning child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. Won't happen anymore.
Now, those comments were made in battleground North Carolina yesterday.
Okay, and North Carolina's had a history of battling these kinds of issues. Mm-hmm. There was a big dust-up, I don't know if it was 8 years ago, whatever, over they had a bathroom bill up in North Carolina. Yeah. So this issue has been percolating, if you will, in North Carolina for a long time. Tony, I'm just going to say this, that we've noted the growing power of the executive branch. I'm not sure exactly, politically speaking, historically speaking, when this started, but certainly with President Obama, who said, hey, listen, I have a pen. I can sign an executive order. So President Trump did it. Joe Biden did it. Former President Trump is now saying if he's reelected, he'll do it. I'm not sure this is the way the founders intended for policies to be enacted. And honestly, I'm not sure how much the president constitutionally can do. But we do have a Department of Education that, frankly, sticks its nose into what happens in public schools across the country. So I guess if you're running the executive branch, you can at least do that.
Yeah, if you will pardon the phrase, sometimes you're just left to play with the hand that you're dealt.
Yeah,
I think that's where we're at with our government and the way it's functioning as far as the executive branch goes. So we've rarely over the past 2 decades really had a full alignment of all the branches of government. So both the House and the Senate and the presidency being lined up in uniform, which is where you could get a lot of these laws and, for instance, on the gender reassignment, the trans men and women's sports, those issues where you could get that type of legislation pushed through and enacted. So now we're just kind of left with this precedence of the executive branch being in charge of I guess by fiat, executive fiat, legislating these rules. And I think it was smart of Donald Trump to mention this in North Carolina because I don't know if everybody realizes there's a lot of sports is a big deal in North Carolina, just like it is in most states in the U.S. But you've got Duke, you've got UNC, you've got some big schools there.
Yeah,
and college sports especially is big. So him wanting to make that a point, that's one of the issues he's going to take up. I do think that was smart. Yes, unfortunate that we have to rely on the presidency to do that through executive orders, but he's just kind of doing the best that he can.
Well, and in fact, the very existence of these huge bureaucracies that are not, I'm not going to say they're completely unconstitutional, but I don't think the founding fathers conceived of these huge bureaucracies that have one foot in the legislative branch and one foot in the executive branch.
Right.
So Congress technically has oversight, for example, over the Department of Education in terms of funding. And then the executive branch, these things are under the executive branch. So these kind of bridge whatever gaps there are in between the executive and the legislative branch. So it's really a hybrid. These are hybrid institutions that Congress created because Congress grabbed too much power, I think, from the states and tried to run everything from Washington, D.C. And like you said, now we're stuck with the reality of it, and that's what President Trump is dealing with when he's making promises like this.
And I think that's why you are starting to see or hear the rumblings and the talk of the current administration about fortifying, seeing what they can do to fortify some of these departments in preparation of a possible Trump presidency, what might come in and make serious reforms to some of these departments that are just out of control, like the Department of Education,
right,
and others like that. So I think that's kind of why you're starting to see them talk about that. What can we do to make sure that Trump can't, dismantle the Department of Education or make serious reforms of the Department of Justice or the Department of Agriculture or, the EPA. So I think that's why another result of that.
Well, and when you're talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. coming in, let's make America healthy again.
Right.
Okay. Well, if we're getting
makes the FDA's ears perk up,
absolutely.
right?
So is Donald Trump going to turn RFK Jr. loose to completely deconstruct, reconstruct, however you want to term it, some of these huge agencies that oversee health in America and big pharma and so on and so forth? So there is a lot that could happen in a Trump presidency, and the deep state, as President Trump found out in 2016, the deep state don't play.
No,
I mean they want to protect their turf, and so it would make sense that they would look to the Democratic Party to try to fortify their position, to resist whatever Trump wants to do in his 4 years, because basically then it becomes a waiting game. We think we can outwait you.
That's right.
And hope for a Democrat to come in to shore up. Anyway, it is a fascinating time to be alive as we watch what's happening in America, these kind of shifting winds.
Yeah.
So
now the gender stuff is it's resonating with voters in North Carolina, but also people in states like New York, where I've got audio here from a mom by the name of Natalia Marakver, if I said her name correctly. She's a mom and a former Democrat in New York that's been put off by Dems pushing the gender stuff here. Clip 2.
Why are they fighting for gender reassignment surgery for children who can't even consent, to any other surgeries or any other procedures? And why are they trying to destroy, the nuclear family and legitimize girls and women in sports and put men in women's locker rooms. I don't know, in women's prisons. It's really very baffling, especially for a Democrat who voted for Biden. And, I was a huge Obama supporter who told my parents, who are Republicans, that if they didn't vote for Obama, then they were voting against my future. So it's really shocking to see how my party has left me.
And that's just one of many voices.
Yeah. Tony, I'm gonna answer her question, this lady, okay, and I'm gonna say this, that the progressives, and you use air quotes here, folks, the progressives in this country, the progressive ideology, and I'd say progressive / cultural Marxist ideology, is twofold, okay? First, they push unlimited individualism. So this explains why they're in favor of transgender manipulation, because they believe and they teach that an individual has absolute control over their own lives, even to the point of denying biology if they want to. Okay, and you say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it does if the second thing you believe as a progressive / cultural Marxist is that the experts rule. And whatever the quote unquote experts say, that is the truth. And therefore, you have to undermine alternative institutions. You have to undermine parental rights, because you can't have parents making decisions for kids if those decisions are contrary to what the quote unquote experts say. And we saw this, I hate to bring up COVID. We saw this during COVID, where people were being told, no, you cannot make a decision for yourself if that individualism contradicts the experts. So what they want is an administrative state run by the so-called experts, and if they have to undermine all the other institutions on the way to that administrative state by using unbridled individualism, that's what they'll do.
Yeah, they want to use, when it is convenient for them, when it is a means to the end that they desire, they will push individualism and liberty, individual liberty, and the right for each person to choose what to do, what is right in their own eyes, until a certain point when it hits the wall of the ideology of the government that's in charge of the state. Then the hammer comes down, and you see that, because the people who were protesting in the Kamala Harris rally, right? They were expressing their free speech, and they were disrupting, obviously, but their ideology, right? They have a right to their beliefs, right? Jesus is Lord. They have a right to profess those, but that is clearly demonstrated when it comes up against the ideology of the state, which if anybody's an empty vessel and is a figurehead and a puppet of the state, it's Kamala Harris at this point. It ran right up into it. So what is the immediate message and response they get? You're at the wrong rally.
Yeah.
And we see time and time again where Christians' rights, their right to individualism and their right to liberty is suppressed and squelched at the behest of the state, because it just doesn't line up, like you mentioned. Individualism up to a certain point. When it serves the purpose of the state, they'll push individualism, and that's what you're seeing. It's so crazy to me that it's taken the most radical of issues and just the denial of basic biology to get some of these people. And I'm glad they're coming around, but unfortunately, and sometimes I view it as this: where were you 10 years ago?
Yeah,
you're calling us crazy for saying that. You know what? This is the next logical step.
Right.
It starts with homosexual marriage, and then it moves on to transgenderism, and now it'll be the extremes of transgenderism. It'll move on to children. We've been saying that this whole time. American
like age of consent laws.
Oh yeah. Yes, exactly. So it's like, where were you 10 years ago? We would have appreciated you coming around and joining with us then. We probably could have put a stop to it.
And I'll just add this, that part of the reason why people did not understand that 10 years ago, obviously, most normal people are living their lives.
Right.
They're getting married. They're finding jobs. They're having children. They're going to soccer games, okay? So they are not paying as close attention as maybe they should have been. Meanwhile, these people who have nothing else going on in their lives except their radical ideology are constantly infesting the major institutions of our country and bringing taking their ideology with them and co-opting the media, co-opting even corporations, but Hollywood and all these others that we've known about, Madison Avenue, for a long, long time. And then these normal folks wake up one day and they go, "Wait, you're telling me what? You're telling me you're at school, you're telling my child that he might be a she, and you're telling me I have no right to know about it?" Mm-hmm. That's the rude awakening, but it comes really after 50 years of this infestation.
Latino, anti-Hispanic, based on his immigration policies. But one Latino that has been a longtime supporter of former President Trump is none other than Bob Unanue of Goya Foods. Remember him? He supported Trump several years ago, and you had people like AOC calling for a boycott of Goya Foods, which is the largest Hispanic food brand out there. But I've got some audio here of Mr. Unanue talking about how there are a lot of Latinos that support Trump based on things like his jobs policy and border policy. Clip 4.
The Latino community is fed up of being exploited, used, and abused on the border and trafficking, with the economy. You know, we're hardworking people, and we're letting people into this country to not just take jobs away and move us into poverty by paying for these people who are not working, but we have an unsafe community. We're not strong around the world, and we're losing this country. There's people who come to this country, risked all for everything, and only to find that it's becoming the land of exploitation.
Listen, what's bizarre to me, but this goes to what we were just talking about, is here you have, now he's the founder of Goya Foods, right?
Yes.
Okay, the largest, would you say, Hispanic-owned food company?
I think it started before Bob. He's a member of the family.
Okay, all right. So the Democratic Party supposedly is all for minority prosperity, but not if you don't toe the line when it comes to political beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the president of Goya Foods supporting Donald Trump. All of a sudden, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, calls for a boycott. Mm-hmm. Okay, why is AOC wanting to destroy and dismantle the success of a Hispanic-owned company? Because, as we were saying, individualism and freedom and minority prosperity is only allowed if you play ball with the power brokers. I forgot about the fact that AOC called for a boycott, and then what conservatives did is they called for a boycott. Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to buy Goya Foods.
It worked.
And it worked.
The party of tolerance is the most intolerant party. In America.
Yeah, I just saw. I don't know if it came out today. It was a USA Today Suffolk poll showed that Donald Trump leads Latino voters like 49 to 38. 49% to 38.
That nationally?
I think nationally, yeah.
Wow. So that wouldn't surprise me. The Democratic hold on the Hispanic population, and by the way, folks, we absolutely understand and freely admit the Hispanic and Latino population in the United States is not monolithic.
Right.
I mean, you have people from El Salvador and Mexico and Nicaragua. I mean, there's all sorts of ethnic differences, but this is the way that the media treats Hispanics and Latinos as one group. But there has been a drain away from the Democratic Party going on over the last 7-8 years. So that would not surprise me.
What would you attribute that to? Is it more of the social erosion that the Democratic Party has succumbed to with, for instance, like you mentioned, the transgender ideology, the denial of basic biology? What would you attribute some of that drain to? Is it some of Trump's economic policies?
I think it's both of which. I think it's everything you're talking about. First of all, anyone who comes to this country, perhaps now, true asylum seekers who, the way we used to judge that is that people are trying to escape political persecution, not just a bad economy.
Cuban Americans.
Cuban American, yes, people from Cuba. So I'm going to set those aside. But for the most part, people come to this country to find success.
Mm-hmm.
They want economic success. So I think the Latino population coming from a lot of countries in Latin America that have struggled generation upon generation, lots of inequity in a lot of these countries. They're coming here to succeed, and they recognize when policies are instituted that are going to take them to a economic situation that they escaped from which they escaped. So they're going to recognize that, but it's also two other things. I would say the hostility of the Democratic Party towards religion.
Right.
A lot of these folks coming from Latin America are Catholic or evangelical. They don't like to see Gretchen Whitmer with her Dorito abuse of the Catholic doctrine of the Eucharist and transubstantiation and all those kind of things. That was mockery. They don't like to see that as well. And then it would be the social issues deriving from those religious beliefs. What's the old, one of the evangelical Christian leaders, I forget which one it was, said that Latinos are conservatives. They just don't know it yet. And I think a lot of them are figuring out their values align more with the Republican Party. And I'll tell you this.
That was Ronald Reagan, by the way.
Ronald Reagan said that?
Latinos are Republican. They just don't know it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I listen, if I was the Democratic Party, I'd be worried about the same kind of trend happening in the black community over issues like education and school choice.
Yeah, we do have more sound on that once we get past the break. We're too close to it right now. I can't do it justice.
You can't do it justice. Sound on what? Talking about the black community?
Yeah, we have voices from the black community in terms of Trump support.
Now, I'm not naive. I know that at this point, the Democratic Party still has a lock on the black community, but we do see that draining away. And I'm not quite sure, Tony, kind of to answer your question, some of this may be tied to Trump's personality. It's not just his policies, but like black men who like Trump, they see, and maybe a lot of Hispanics see that kind of machismo, and they just see, listen, this guy's a fighter, and he doesn't care who's taking a swing at him. He's going to fight back. Listen, Italians like that too.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
All right, folks, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, more of today's issues. You're listening to the American Family Radio Network.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Life is full of mysterious happenings. Some of the mysteries seem to occur at such a right time that many of them are called simply a coincidence. Such a coincidence, perhaps one of the most famous of all times, occurred to a man who has been called the greatest American who ever lived, Abraham Lincoln. It happened one day while Abe was standing around on the front porch of the little country store that he and his partner, a fellow by the name of Barry, ran up in Illinois. Business was very poor. Barry turned to Abe during the course of their conversation and asked Abe a question. "How much longer do you think we can keep going?" Abe answered him, "Well, it looks like our business has just about winked out. I wouldn't mind so much if we could sell everything we've got and pay all our bills and have just enough left over to buy one book, Blackstone's Commentary on English Law, but I guess I can't." About that time, a wagon drove up to the store. The man stopped the team and looked up at Abe. "I'm trying to move my family west, and I'm out of money," he said. "I've got a good barrel on here that I could sell for 50 cents. Abe gave the situation a good look. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out what was, according to him, the last 50 cents I had, and gave it to the man. Well, the barrel sat on the porch all day long, and Barry made fun of Abe just about all of that time. Late that afternoon, Abe went over to where the barrel was and noticed some papers in the bottom. He put his long arm down and pushed the papers around until he hit something solid. He could tell by the way that it felt that it was a book. Abe pulled it out of the barrel and stood astonished. The book was the Commentary on English Law by Blackstone. Here are the words of Abe. I stood there, holding the book, looking up toward the heavens. There came a deep impression on me that God had something for me to do, and He was showing me now that I had to get ready for it. And Abe did prepare himself, mentally and spiritually, for the great task that laid before him. Now, I know that there are those who say that that was just a coincidence, and it could have been just that, or it could have been a coincidence with some divine planning behind it. Let us not rule that possibility out, for we cannot say that it was not any more than we can say that it was. There are a lot of mysteries like that one. Paul says that we should be stewards of the mysteries of God. And we should be, because it's true what William Cooper said. God moves in a mysterious way His wonders to perform. He did then, and He does today.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Be silent before me so that I may speak. Then let come upon me what may. Why should I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hands? Though He slay me, I will hope in Him. Job 13 through 15.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back, folks, to today's issues. I'm Ed Vitagliano, sitting in for Tim Wildman today. I'm joined in studio by Tony Vitagliano and Chris Woodward. All right, Chris, take us to the news.
Well, I teased this going into the break here. We've been playing a lot of clips throughout the morning. I just aired one of Bob Unanue, the head of Goya Foods. His father started the company, by the way, Don Unanue. Bob is the son. It started back in the 1930s. But now we're going to kind of shift gears and go into related sound bites. A lot of people in media and politicians have made a big deal about the need for black men to vote for Kamala Harris. Former President Barack Obama came out in recent weeks on the campaign trail and said we have to have more black men vote for Kamala. It's vitally important that we do that. I've got a bit of audio here from Stacey Abrams. Now, she became a household name a few years ago when she ran the first time against Brian Kemp, who is now the governor of Georgia. And Stacey Abrams begins in this soundbite talking about the need for black men to support Kamala Harris, and then, as she often does, makes it into an issue about race and gender. Clip 5.
Black men are the second strongest cohort of Democratic voters. What we're seeing, though, is that she is showing them due respect by actually speaking to their issues. And those issues differ from other cohorts. I'm not quite certain why there is this panic about black men voting. They vote. In fact, they vote more than their counterparts in any other community for Democrats. However, we do have to acknowledge that there is sexism, there is racism, there are challenges in our electorate, and that's why it's so important that Kamala Harris is going everywhere and talking to everyone.
Now, before we get your reaction to that, I want to play audio from a guy named Bruce Lavelle. He's an Atlanta businessman and Trump supporter, and he was on Fox and Friends this morning responding to these.
Is he black?
Yes.
Okay.
Clip 6.
The Democrats have been playing the race game. We saw it come down the escalators when President Trump came down the escalators of using the big bad boogeyman. And it's not going to work. Listen, let me tell you something as a black man. I'm a business owner here for almost 30 years. Made my wealth here in Atlanta. It's been very good to me and my family. And as a black man, I'll tell you, Fox News viewers, that's not the issue. The issue is the failed Democrat Party for many, many years. Most, if not all, the Democrat Party policies have been dismal and a failure in the black culture. That's all black culture, not just black men, black women in general.
All right, so let me ask you this, Chris. The sound we heard from Stacey Abrams, did I understand her correctly in explaining why there's some panic about for whom black men are going to be voting in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
She mentioned the fact that there's, maybe hostility towards women. I guess she's saying black men are misogynistic. But was she implying that black men are also like racist?
From what I thought that too, but upon further review,
Yeah.
to use a football season term, it would appear that she's basically trying to make it that all of a sudden we're concerned about black men voting because we're racist, and then she threw that in with we don't like Kamala Harris because she's a female.
Okay,
which is ludicrous.
Tony, I'm just gonna say Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams is not, she had a failed gubernatorial campaign in 2018. I don't think she's ever admitted that she lost. Okay, I just don't think that she is necessarily a good spokesperson for the black community. I think she has some radical ideas. I consider her to be a race baiter, okay? But I don't think that that's what's going on with black men, okay? Now, this disparity between who men and women seem to be voting for, at least according to polls, I mean, that's a real gender gap. We were talking about that maybe during the break. I don't think black men are necessarily thinking any differently than white men on this. To me, that's a racist idea. I think that black men want to succeed just like white men do, exactly right. And economic policy is hindering them, and that's what's driving them towards Trump. I think they honestly believe that Donald Trump is their best chance to succeed economically.
That's exactly right. This is Stacey Abrams in her statement is a perfect representation of the cognitive dissonance that the Democratic Party has from the party itself and those who are ruling over the party and the elite, those at the top, and the everyday average working man. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a white man or a black man. If you are going to the grocery store and you're trying to provide for your family, you're both looking at the price of groceries.
Right.
You're both looking at the price of gas. You're both trying to find a house to buy. And those things are becoming more and more unaffordable. But it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. We only want to talk about the individual whenever it suits the ideology of the state, or
right.
In this instance of the party. The Democratic Party doesn't want to think about black men as individuals who have their own concerns, who have their own motivations, who have their own worries. They only want to think of they only want to lump black men, just like they do as Latinos, they just want to lump them into a minority group that should get behind the Democrats every time. Lock, stock, and barrel. Excuse me. Thank you. So yeah, the sense of individualism goes out the window. It can't possibly, in their minds, it can't possibly be because black men have grown weary of 3.5 years of record inflation, right? It couldn't possibly be that. It has to be something else, and the blame usually turns to something to do with a racial or an ethnic hierarchy, or even a gender hierarchy, right? It has to turn to something else. It can't possibly be because of dismal policies that have affected black men, just like it has affected white men and everybody else in this country for 3.5 years.
Yeah, and listen, this is the price you pay for identity politics.
Exactly right.
If you're going to play identity politics and divide us up, you are going to find that coalition beginning to disintegrate when individuals think for themselves.
That's right.
Listen, all white people don't vote for Republicans. That's kind of the impression you're left with. If all black people are supposed to vote for the Democratic Party, then who are all white people supposed to vote for? Okay? Well, it doesn't work that way. When the Democratic Party views the quote-unquote white population, I hate kind of using these broad brush labels, they try to peel away white voters who think for themselves. But when they turn their focus to the black community, like Joe Biden famously said, if you're not voting for Joe Biden, you ain't black. Well, excuse me, I'm guessing blacks are individuals and they think for themselves too. And listen, I think the future could be bleak for the Democratic Party if they continue with identity politics, because a lot of individual black people are going to want to push for school choice. I mean, black people, by and large, this sounds like I'm painting the whole community, but by and large, they want educational opportunity. They see education as a part of the ladder that allows their kids to climb out and get away from poverty or a lack of opportunity. If Donald Trump wins the election in 2 weeks, and during his 4 years pushes for school choice,
right,
the Democratic Party is going to have a hard time pushing back against that, and they could see more of a drain from the black community.
It just seems like what is drawing people from typically underrepresented groups in the Republican Party, what's drawing them to the Republican Party is this idea of the Republican Party saying, we don't care about any of your externalities, right? Any of your characteristics that the Democrats place far too much emphasis on, like the color of your skin, your gender, where you are socioeconomically. We just care about you as the individual, and we all want to have prosperity. We all want to have opportunity here, and we want to have an economy that will work for everybody. What's drawing them to that, and is that mentality, and to me, that is, it's a reflection, so to speak, of the way the church operates, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what draws people. One of the things that draws people into the kingdom of God is the acceptance and the acceptance of no matter who you are, where you're from, what your background is, neither Greek nor Jew, all are welcome.
And can individually have a relationship with God.
Yeah, can enter
not
the
because
kingdom.
of your group.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
anyway. Good.
For the next little segment here, I've got 2 clips. I'll play one and then call for the other, much like we did just a moment ago. While some current and former Democrats are now siding with Republicans, specifically former President Donald Trump in this election, there are some Republicans that are siding with Kamala Harris. For example, I've got former Representative Liz Cheney yesterday in Wyoming, Liz Cheney yesterday at an event featuring Kamala Harris, talking about this. Listen to what Liz Cheney has to say this week about Kamala Harris. Clip 7.
I believe that every one of us in this election has a duty and an obligation to do what we know is right for the country, and that's to support Vice President Harris.
Okay, so Liz Cheney wants us to do what's right for the country and support Kamala Harris, whereas just 4 short years ago, Liz Cheney had this to say about Kamala Harris, clip 8.
It's very clear. She is a radical liberal. I do think the American people are going to take a look at this record and realize she is very much a radical liberal.
That's one of the great things about the internet.
Yeah. Well, listen, it seems to me that Liz Cheney, probably for a number of reasons, has gotten her feelings hurt. She protective of her dad. Her dad is kind of on the out with Donald Trump, with a lot of other establishment Republicans. I think it's not hard for people who are operating according to emotions to set aside. You talked about, Tony, the cognitive dissonance. Liz Cheney would say, okay, I think she's a radical liberal, but Donald Trump is more dangerous to the country. I mean, if you're operating according to emotions or past hurts or what have you, there are plenty of ways to explain a contradictory position, like we just heard.
Oh, it's why I love politics and politicians. It's because they're just so open to forgiveness.
Yeah.
Right? No matter what you've said about me in the past, I forgive you of that.
Right.
If it's politically expedient for me to do so.
Yeah.
Just like Joe Biden forgave Kamala Harris for telling him, on the stage for just ripping him up and down about him supporting busing, right? Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah, he's racist.
All water under the bridge. It's just forgiveness everywhere. And I tell you, it's going to be hard for a lot of Republicans to vote for Donald Trump with a conservative bulwark like Liz Cheney, throwing her weight, you know, and all of the 100 people who follow her and viewed their streams, you know, throwing their weight behind Kamala. It's
And to be fair, Republicans do this too. And this is why you said politicians. Republicans do this too. I remember George H.W. Bush calling Ronald Reagan's economic plan voodoo economics. And then lo and behold, when the opportunity presented itself, he became the vice president with Ronald Reagan and pushed voodoo economics.
I don't want to, I mean, to be fair, J.D. Vance didn't have some great things to say about Trump early on,
true.
right?
Yeah,
we want to
true.
be fair around
Mike
here.
Pence supported Ted Cruz just weeks before Donald Trump picked him to be the running mate. So.
Right.
Well, and look, I'll just say this. I don't mind that Liz Cheney has changed her mind. Okay. I mean, that, like we're saying, that does happen. But I don't think many Republicans are going to join her on the anti-Trump train when the question in her mind seems to be what is best for the country. I think a lot of Republicans are making up their own. Liz Cheney has never been very popular amongst conservatives. Neither was her father.
Look, it's all about sorry to interrupt.
No,
it's all about power for certain people in that sphere. Liz Cheney isn't affected by the cost of groceries, or by the cost of housing, or by the cost of gas, like we just talked about. They're not affected by it. So in their minds, it's a lot of it is political power. It's motivated by a desire for power. Really, that to me, that's the only reason I can think of somebody who historically was conservative, now wanting to throw their weight behind someone who is just a radical Marxist. Because
who will take
they're
other
not,
people's money away.
Exactly. They're not going to be affected by the policies of the radical Marxist. What all they care about in this instance, in my opinion, is sticking it to Donald Trump as much as possible. They've got an axe to grind, and that's why they're coming out of the woodwork to start supporting Kamala.
And you raise a really good point. And folks, this really does irritate me about politicians. All right. I don't mind if politicians go to Washington, D.C. and make a good living. Okay. I'm not saying that I'm jealous of that. But it seems to me that far too many people, this is not a radical thing. I'm sure most of our listeners agree. It is far too common for people to go up to Washington, D.C. to be career politicians, and then they get filthy rich doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And as a result of that, absolutely cannot comprehend what the people in their district or their state are going through when it comes to economic trouble and economic problems. I don't care who you are, okay, on which side of the aisle you are politically. Right. That's why I believe if there was a way to constitutionally have term limits, I just think that would be the best thing. Yes. You go up there for a couple of terms, for 7, 8, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, whatever, and then you're done. And you do not get filthy rich. You don't have a spouse who does insider trading. You don't get paid big bucks by these corporate conglomerates who are just putting money into your number one task, which is to get reelected. And then these people leave when they finally retire at 90.
Right.
Okay.
Getting wheeled out.
Going to go home and enjoy time with family.
Either in a coffin
rich.
or in a wheelchair.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what it takes to get a lot of them out.
But it's a good point. They don't know what most average people are going through, and it's because a lot of them, I don't want to say all, I'm sure there's a lot of good people up there, but most of them seem to be making a bundle of money. They don't care about the folks that sent them there.
Well, as we discussed at length yesterday on the show, which you can listen on AFR.net, go to the podcast section, Democrats claim that Donald Trump serving up French fries and other things at McDonald's was a, quote, staged event. It was all smoke and mirrors. It was a staged event. And I find that interesting because Kamala Harris herself has done many staged events. For example, she's made a big deal out of the fact that Ron DeSantis wouldn't call her to talk about storm response. But she started posting on X all these videos of her talking to some state or local official on the phone. And it just so happens that there was a high-quality camera rolling on the person she was talking to while being recorded on a camera.
Yes. In other words, she wasn't really talking to them?
Correct.
Yeah.
There was also another staged event yesterday. This was at the same thing that featured Liz Cheney. And let me set it up here. It's got an audience. Somebody in the audience asked moderator/journalist Maria Shriver, hey, can I ask Kamala Harris a question? Listen to what Maria Shriver tells this audience member, clip 9.
You're not, unfortunately. We have some predetermined questions, and hopefully I'll be able to ask some of the questions that might be in your head. I hope so.
That is, by definition, a staged event.
Listen, that's hilarious,
Yeah.
okay, because it plays to this is no longer a trope about Kamala Harris. You know, everyone's always saying she can't really handle live interviews. She has one with Brett Baer, and it's a complete disaster. This is why people are wondering about the earrings she's wearing, and is someone feeding answers into her head? She does a town hall. This is a town hall event. The definition of a town hall event is that the people in the town come to the hall and ask questions of the politician.
Yeah.
And so now they just have prearranged questions. That's not a town hall event. And to Chris's point, it's obviously staged.
It's the town halls for Kamala Harris are pep rallies, right? You have someone stand up to ask a question, and the first thing they say is, Kamala Harris, I just want to say I love you so much. What's your favorite dish to eat with Doug Emhoff? You know, it's so rich for someone to talk about staging, to accuse Donald Trump of staging, for instance, the shift he worked at McDonald's, because every single one of Kamala Harris's interviews, almost, we all know the ones that weren't staged, but almost every single one of her interviews are the definition of staged.
Well, and the CBS interview, people are suspicious of what CBS did. That's supposed to be a journalistic event, but did CBS edit her answers to make her look not stupid, to make her look more intelligent or more aware of the political intricacies of the question? Listen, obviously what President Trump did at McDonald's was staged. Nobody believes Donald Trump actually works there. He was making a point by dressing up and handing out French fries. He was making a point that he doesn't believe Kamala Harris ever worked at a McDonald's, that she really doesn't care about the middle class, that she had a privileged life, and that Donald Trump cares about the people who work at and eat at McDonald's. That was the point, and good grief, it was brilliant. I saw clips of people in liberal media world admitting it was a brilliant idea.
It wasn't patronizing. Every time Kamala Harris interacts with another human being, it feels like she's patronizing. First of all, it feels like she's uncomfortable talking to a real person, but it feels patronizing. What Donald Trump did at McDonald's didn't feel patronizing. For one thing, he didn't show up and put on the McDonald's shirt, and it's like, I'm one of you, I'm just like you. He left the tie on. He left, he took his suit coat off and he put on the apron. And it's not patronizing. I don't know, keep going back to that word. It's letting someone know that, you know what, I may be a billionaire, but I can relate to you. I at least understand and want to better understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, because he's balanced budgets. He's had to work through the red tape of government bureaucracies. He understands what a lot of these things are. Now, as we've said on this show, we try to be fair here.
Right.
Where he's not perfect in this. And I was complaining about politicians going to D.C. and becoming wealthy. Well, Donald Trump had a very privileged world into which he was born and was given money, but he succeeded in building businesses.
Yes, and that brings me to this final clip. We can talk about this stuff for the next 2 days, and you're still going to have people saying, well, Trump's still not going to get the female vote. But one female that says she is going to vote for Donald Trump is race car driver Danica Patrick, who this morning on Fox News said this is the first election she has ever voted in, and she is picking for Donald Trump, a man she said is not perfect, but he's the better option. Clip 12.
It feels like voting for Donald Trump is like the vote of reason. It's like the rational, reasonable choice. I feel like most of all, though, what this country could be if he gets into office with all of the amazing, brilliant people that are supporting him, I feel like it could not only be make America great again, but make America greater than it's ever been.
Wow.
You know, I saw a clip of a speech from Zachary Levi, who's an actor that I happen to like.
Yeah.
He played Tony joked when I went to see American Underdog.
Yeah.
Okay, because he played the part of Kurt Warner, who became the Rams quarterback, but basically went from being a stock boy to getting a chance to make it in the NFL.
Right.
So Tony teased me when I went to see it. Did you go see that with me?
I don't think I did.
Okay. He said, "Oh, your favorite actor playing your favorite quarterback." We're just a Rams
He was
fan.
also the voice of Eugene Fitzherbert in Tangled.
Okay, I didn't know that. But I saw this clip of him. He was speaking at an event, and what he seemed most impressed about or impressed with is the fact that Donald Trump has opened his campaign to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, to Elon Musk, and that seemed to have impressed him as an actor. He's pretty well known. He played the part of Shazam. Not a big Shazam fan in terms of the movies, but he's pretty well known in Hollywood. Zachary Levi, and he said that the actors, conservative actors in Hollywood, this is the time to speak out. But it's the point we're making here is that he was impressed with Trump reaching out to other people to try to make America prosperous and successful and healthy again. Levi mentioned make America healthy again.
Yes.
For a lot of people, this is a big deal.
That's one of the things that Joe Biden said when he took the oath of office and became president. He said when he announced all of his cabinet members, he wanted to make the cabinet look like America. And he wanted to have a diverse group of people run this agency or this cabinet. There's nothing wrong with that. We are all different skin types and skin colors and types and sizes and whatnot. But the problem is they were all from the same ideological spectrum, which is woke as all get out. And that's why we're in the situation we're in.
Well, our problems in America are far-reaching.
Yeah.
And they run deep.
Right.
And I don't think you can have this chasm between both sides of the political spectrum any longer if you're going to solve any of these problems. You're going to have people willing to cross the ideological line. It doesn't mean you don't stick to your guns when it comes to issues like abortion, but our problems are deep, and you've got to reach out across the aisle, so to speak. So anyway, Chris, thank you.
Thank you
for your part. Folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break for news, and when we come back, Steve Jordahl will be joining us. We'll have more of what's happening. You are listening to Today's Issues. Hope you come back.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
When you hear us mention the AFR app, you probably think about your smartphone. We do have apps for Apple and Android users, but it doesn't stop there. If you have an Alexa, we've got you covered. But wait, there's more. Sorry. There's also an AFR app for Roku or Apple TV. So many ways you can listen to your favorite show, podcast, or music. Find out more at afr.net/apps.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. President Trump campaigned in North Carolina yesterday, talking about, among other things, fairness in women's sports.
On day one, I will sign an executive order banning schools from promoting critical race theory or transgender insanity. I will keep men out of women's sports. I will sign a law banning child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. Won't happen anymore.
A lifelong Democrat who is now voting for President Trump says she can't understand the mindset of Democrats who push the agenda of gender mutilation of children and allowing men to compete against women. Natalia Muraker is a New York mother of 3.
That's a great question. Why are they fighting for gender reassignment surgery for children who can't even consent, to any other surgeries or any other procedures? And why are they trying to destroy, the nuclear family and legitimize girls and women in sports and put men in women's locker rooms? I don't know, in women's prisons. It's really very baffling, especially for a Democrat who voted for Biden. It's really shocking to see how my party has left me.
Some interesting comments coming from former Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams about people who are voting for Kamala Harris and those who are not. And she claims that race and gender are a factor.
Black men are the second strongest cohort of Democratic voters. What we're seeing, though, is that she is showing them due respect by actually speaking to their issues. And those issues differ from other cohorts. I'm not quite certain why there is this panic about Black men voting. They vote. In fact, they vote more than their counterparts in any other community for Democrats. However, we do have to acknowledge that there is sexism, there is racism, there are challenges in our electorate, and that's why it's so important that Kamala Harris is going everywhere and talking to everyone.
Bruce Lavelle is an Atlanta business owner and heads the Trump National Diversity Coalition. He's not surprised Abrams would bring up racism.
The Democrats have been playing the race game. We saw it come down the escalators when President Trump came down the escalators of using the big bad boogeyman. And it's not going to work. Listen, let me tell you something. As a Black man, I'm a business owner here for almost 30 years. Made my wealth here in Atlanta. It's been very good to me and my family. And as a Black man, I'll tell you, that's not the issue. The issue is the failed Democrat Party for many, many years. Most, if not all, the Democrat Party policies have been dismal and a failure in the Black culture. That's all Black culture, not just Black men, Black women in general.
2 Wisconsin college students say they were doing God's work at a Kamala Harris rally this past weekend.
During a rally at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, Vice President Kamala Harris was attacking former President Donald Trump on the abortion issue when 2 pro-life students let their presence be known.
Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
Luke Pulaski is a junior at the school. During an appearance on Fox and Friends, he discussed how he and his fellow Christian were asked to leave the event.
I yelled out to the crowd that abortion is the sacrament of Satan. And when I said that, I deeply do believe that as a Christian. I took this cross off my neck that I wear, and as we were getting asked to leave, I held it up in the air and waved at her and pointed to her, and she looked directly in the eye, kind of gave me an evil smirk, and I want to clear that up and confirm that she 100% was talking to us.
Grant Beth is the other University of Wisconsin-La Crosse junior who felt led by the Lord.
We were heckled at, we were cursed at, we were mocked. And that's the biggest thing for me personally. In reflection of the event, Jesus was mocked, his disciples were mocked, and that's okay. In reality, we did God's work, and we were there for the right reasons.
I'm Chad Groening.
More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pete.
Election Night Coverage 2024.
On election night, the crew will be, Tim, you'll be here, Ed will be here, Wesley will be here, Walker will be here, and I'll be along for color commentary.
We're going to be offering some astute political analysis.
Yeah.
It will be astute.
Huh?
Yes.
If it's not astute,
why bother?
Why bother? That's our motto.
On Election Night beginning at 6 Central, it's Election Night Coverage 2024 on American Family Radio. Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
Welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildman today. I've asked Tony Vitagliano to join me because we had just a bunch of folks out. Tim and Wesley and Ray Pritchard's out. Fred Jackson's out.
The dog catcher was out.
The dog catcher, that's right. The guy who makes popcorn for us down the hall. So I asked Tony to come on and join. I think he's doing a great job. He's very knowledgeable about what's happening. And Steve Jordahl is in the building, so
Yes,
he
he
joins
is.
us with the Paisley shirt.
What a coincidence that you guys both have the same last name.
Yes.
You get that a lot.
Very rare, yes.
So I'm reading my Twitter feed right now.
Yes.
And I am seeing that Howard Stern is demanding that all Trump supporters stop listening to his radio show, to which I say your terms are acceptable.
Yes.
Yeah,
I've never listened. No, I take that back. We kind of went to battle. I'm talking about AFA, American Family Association, against Howard Stern. I want to say back in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. So we were for a while. I did have to listen to the show because we were targeting. He almost went off the air. I mean, that was a huge battle.
How did we miss that one?
Well, so we went after the advertisers, and because his show was just rank, and it was when it went syndicated into syndication, was showing up all over the country, and so eventually we had people volunteer to listen and keep track of the advertisers, and we contacted them. Many of them didn't even know they were advertising on the show, what have you.
I had to.
But anyway,
now you have to.
What's that?
I had to, so now you have to. What you said.
So we had those folks do all that. But I listened, I don't know, for a couple of weeks to his programming, and he is absolutely vile.
Yeah.
And just listen. Pray for Howard Stern. We don't cast anyone aside. Pray for him. Pray that God gets through to him. But that doesn't excuse what he's doing. And he hated AFA for a long time. If I were to sit next to him on a plane and mention who I worked for, he probably would get up and walk to the back of the plane or try to throw me off. I don't know.
Nothing says bad boy rebel like stumping for the current administration and calling for your audience to stop, or at least a segment of your audience to stop listening to you.
I just saw it. I thought it said it. Didn't mean to have a whole discussion going on.
Oh, I don't mind having a whole discussion over something minor.
For those of you who tuned in yesterday, I just want to assure everybody I have checked to make sure that all the cuts that I call for are actually loaded in the machine.
Oh yeah, yesterday you had that. That was an embarrassing moment for you, wasn't it?
Very embarrassing. I didn't sleep last night because of it.
And you know what? When folks, I guess, maybe think that this is easy to do, live radio. It is not easy.
No.
In fact, Tony and I were talking during the break. What can be difficult is while you're talking about, we just had Chris Woodward talking about a story, I'm thinking about what I want to say, and then as you're saying it, you got to be thinking about what you're going to say next. It's not difficult to lose your train of thought.
You're not listening to me then, is what you're saying.
I wasn't listening.
Think
just
of a
this right moment.
response.
Yeah. Well, no, I am. But see, that's the hard thing. Part of me is having to listen to what you say,
I know.
and then what you say. When you play a clip from somebody else, I'm listening, and then I'm trying to formulate my response to it. So, you had my sympathies yesterday.
Okay.
It's not live radio is not an easy thing.
Well, listen to this, if you will. You remember, a couple of weeks ago we talked about Kamala Harris being accused of plagiarism.
Yes, from Wikipedia.
She plagiarized from Wikipedia, and Christopher Rufo, the conservative reporter, had reported that. Well, today we have from a guy named Aaron Sibarium on Twitter. I'm reading from his Twitter page because I think if I'm going to report on someone plagiarizing, it's important that I actually give credit to where I'm getting the story here.
Yeah, that's right.
Exclusive. In 2007, Kamala Harris plagiarized pages of congressional testimony from a Republican Congress. In 2012, she plagiarized fictional stories about sex trafficking but presented it as real. So
this is Christopher Rufo.
No, this is a new guy.
Okay,
Aaron Sibarium, and he has, I mean, pages and pages and pages. I'll show you this, Ed. It's just pages of this.
Wow.
Of examples that he dug up. But let's talk about the sex trafficking plagiarism. So, again, reading from him, in one of the lengthier passages reviewed by the Free Beacon, she lifted a fictionalized story about a victim of sex trafficking and presented it as a real case.
So is the belief that she thought it was real at the time and then therefore portrayed it, or did?
Well, no. She wanted to take credit for it. This is how we know. The story is about a young woman named Kelly and she was found in a restroom. She's a trafficking victim. Polaris Project had this story up, and she said she had saved $200 to escape. She called the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, who got her. And here's the reason we know. The story came from the Polaris Project, which is a nonprofit that runs National Human Trafficking Headline. It posted stories and vignettes on its websites that were, quote, representative of the types of calls the hotline received and meant for informational purposes only, to preserve confidentiality, the changes, everything. It's basically fictionalized.
Right. Okay.
But here's how we know that because they found this girl in a restaurant in D.C., according to the Polaris Project, but somehow conveniently she was found in a restroom in San Francisco when Kamala Harris is retelling the story.
So where was she telling this story? Was this when she's speaking?
She was. Harris included the vignettes in a report she published about the state of human trafficking in California.
Oh, so she purposefully took the story and changed the location
to
make it California
and
appropriate.
Right. And you can see here, I'm showing Ed some of the paragraphs. Everything in white there is what she lifted word for word from Polaris Project.
And so there was no she didn't give any indication in this report that this is an example of a story. She was presenting this as this actually happened. Okay.
This is an example of what we're dealing with in San Francisco.
Wow, this is almost word for word.
And it goes on and on and on. I have example after example after example.
That's so this guy, what's his name again? It's a strange name.
The guy's name is
sounds Armenian.
Aaron Sibarium, Sibarium. I guess he works for the one of the news services here.
All right, so okay, I listen. This plagiarism thing used to be a big deal for people. Apparently, it's not a big deal anymore.
Well, that was my question. Does this disqualify her?
I think it goes. Listen, I think I will say this. I've been a writer for 30 years. Okay, a little longer than that. Before I came here, I came here almost 29 years ago, and have been a writer here ever since. But I was writing for weekly newspapers and all that kind of thing. So I've been a writer for 40 years. My one of the scariest scenarios in my mind is to have made a mistake when I'm copying something out and forgetting to. I always try to source everything in case I use that for writing. I'm always terrified of making a mistake and not sourcing a paragraph and using it and being accused of purposefully plagiarizing. So I want to say this. It is possible to make a mistake when you're writing.
And who couldn't mistakenly put San Francisco instead
No, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
It is possible to make a mistake, make that kind of mistake I'm talking about, if you're doing a lot of research and a lot of writing. But it seems to me that Kamala Harris is just a lazy thinker and a lazy writer. Because what you showed me, this is almost word for word, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. She did not want to do the research herself and to write it out of her own understanding of it. This just strikes me as being lazy. And so, Tony, kind of to answer Steve's question, I'm not sure it's disqualifying anymore because we let a lot of stuff go in terms of personal character. Tim said yesterday, whether we like it or not, character doesn't seem to matter. This is a character issue.
Right.
I don't know if in the minds of most voters that's going to matter, but this does tell us something about Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it's not surprising to me that she is plagiarizing writings, not giving proper references in her writings. Her campaign, to a certain extent, is plagiarizing policies from Donald Trump's campaign.
That's
I
true.
mean, it
That's
shouldn't really
true.
surprise anybody. Just looking over on Donald Trump's paper, no tax on
They're
tips.
sitting next to each other.
Answer number 4 is no taxes on
Kamala Harris. Yeah, so that's not surprising. It is, to me, if I was an average voter, which I am, I would look at that and say, she's probably not qualified for any of the jobs she's had, any of the positions she's held, because somebody who's we've all been there when we were younger in high school, right? You want to take the easy way out whenever you can, right? And
what are you trying to say, Tony?
Are
you trying to confess something about
certain people?
High school?
Not me. Not me.
Other people say. I don't say.
But so
asking for a friend.
But I'm also not running for the highest office in the world.
Yeah.
Right. So
you say, Ed, that it's a laziness. It might be, but I'm wondering because it's from just about every different area of scope that she's written on, whether it's congressional testimonies, books that she wrote, or now reports that she's sending in. I'm wondering if it also reflects the lack of ability to think deeply about anything. If she's not smart enough to write this for herself. She can't seem to write to say anything that isn't scripted for her.
Right. Well, we've seen the video of her stepping out of her vehicle after she's been in there for 30 minutes, walking up to a podium, and then still opening a binder to do a brief, a quick press briefing. She had to have a binder with notes to answer, allegedly answer, questions to see.
Well, and let me just toss this in, and I don't normally like this when I'm about to do, okay, because this is a little bit hearsay, okay, but we have heard from people who have worked for her and with her that she does not like to do her briefings, even as vice president.
Right.
She doesn't like the briefings. She's got better things to do. And listen, someone like Condoleezza Rice, okay, brilliant professor. She thought deeply about things. People like that who are thinkers, they don't mind briefings because they're learning and they love learning. Yeah. So you give me, I wouldn't take 100 Kamala Harris's for one Condoleezza Rice. I just saw her recently on something, and I thought, I forgot how brilliant this woman is. And so
you can tell the difference.
People who like to think and think deeply, they don't mind briefings.
I don't understand how this election is so close, frankly, except that people just hate Trump.
Yeah, I think that's driving it. I think the abortion issue is driving some of Kamala Harris's support. And there are people who share Kamala Harris's worldview. They're on that radical side of the Democratic Party and could not consider voting for anyone who does not hold the same beliefs. So, but to your point, it is there are people on the left who can't believe that Christians are voting for Donald Trump.
Right.
He's been married several times, and okay, I understand that. But what we're engaged in here is really a battle to the death in terms of two mutually exclusive worldviews, and only one is going to come out on top.
Right. Hopefully, you're speaking.
I'm speaking metaphorically.
Metaphorically.
Yes. I don't want to visit from the FBI.
All right. Hey, Donald J. Trump has broken the mainstream media. I'm now plagiarizing from myself.
This is hilarious.
So, you remember this weekend, Donald Trump visited the Pittsburgh Steelers game, the football game at Pittsburgh Steelers, and there was audio of the crowd chanting, USA, USA, USA. Someone pointed out Kamala Harris could very well go to any game she wants to as well. She hasn't yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, after the game, Donald Trump posted a picture of himself in a Steelers uniform with the number 47, which is the president number he wants to be, looking pretty buff.
Yeah.
Huge arms. I mean,
this
he
is
looks
an AI
smart.
generated.
Well, now this is the thing. Is it? Is it AI or is it real? We don't know.
Donald Trump made it. He said, "No, it's real.
No, it's real.
It's a real photo.
It's the best ever." Brent, I have asked Brent to put this up on our Facebook page. You guys can go look at it if you want. But this was Newsweek's headline. Donald Trump has shared what is likely an AI-generated image on his Truth Social account showing him as a player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. In the article, they write this. Verified photos of the former president at the football game on Sunday night show him in a suit at Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh, wearing a blue suit and a red tie. However, the image posted on Truth Social depicts Trump on a football field wearing a jersey for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There is no evidence this ever occurred. Trump's torso and arms also appear to have been altered to appear more muscular than they do in other photos and videos of Trump in sportswear, such as those posted by Trump's golf Instagram account in July.
So are you telling me
we fact-checked this?
Newsweek felt the need to fact-check this?
Yes.
Well,
just in case.
Dad, I also have a confession to make.
Yes.
That picture that I sent to you and Mom of me in the astronaut suit with the moon background, I really didn't go to the moon. I want to get ahead of the fact checkers. I wanted to get ahead of
Let's
the media.
get it out there.
I never
take the
really
heat, like,
actually went to the moon.
This is deeply disappointing, son. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't tell you. All right. So when you showed me this morning, you sent this. I was walking from the parking lot into work. Okay, and I got your text with that picture and the Newsweek fact check. And I could not believe that it was real. I'm not talking about the picture. It's an AI-generated picture with Trump looking buff as a Pittsburgh Steeler. It was a great photo. What I couldn't believe is that Newsweek wasted resources to fact-check this, and that there was at least one person, maybe several layers, that thought this was necessary.
At Newsweek, right?
Well,
Editorially.
It's juxtapose this Newsweek spending mental energy, time, and effort and money on writing up a quick fact check of this. Juxtapose that against their coverage of what we just talked about, the Kamala Harris plagiarisms.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean.
Good point.
I mean, it's just, we want to devote resources to a AI-generated photo of Trump in a Steelers uniform, but there's going to be crickets when it comes to investigating and actual journalism about whether Kamala Harris plagiarized.
And what that means.
And what that means.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. John MacArthur, great charismatic preacher. No, not charismatic. He's got charisma.
Yeah, just the opposite.
Just the opposite.
He's got charisma.
He has charisma. He's a great preacher down in Southern California. And he has written a book basically saying that politics is not going to save this country.
Yeah,
But
why government can't save America, or something like that.
Anyway, he was at his church. Every so often they sit down at his church and have a Q&A with him, and he takes questions from his congregation, any topic that's interesting to them. And somebody asked him about the election. If government can't save you, what are we supposed to do with this election? Well, this is what he had to say. Cut 11.
The other day, Kamala Harris said, "This is the most election ever." So we're not electing a pastor or pastors or elders or church leaders. I think it comes down to one dominating thing: who would keep us and our children most safe? Safe from the encroachment of enemies, terrorists, immorality, corruption, child mutilators, criminals, because that's government's role, to protect those who do good and punish those who do evil. So who is most likely to do that?
And he said it's not even close.
Well,
he didn't mention Trump's name from the stage, at least in the clip that I heard.
Yes.
That was obviously what he said.
I disagree. The book I was talking about, Why Government Can't Save You, was written by John MacArthur years ago.
He's right, too.
Technically, that is true, that in terms of salvation, eternity, government can't accomplish that. But that wasn't the reason why the book was written. So I disagree with that book. But I'm a huge fan of John MacArthur and some of his other books, some of which were kind of life-changing for me. The Gospel According to Jesus, the Gospel According to the Apostles, where he kind of broke down the necessity for Christians to be obedient to God, okay? Not for salvation, but as an expression of it. So I am, generally speaking, a big fan of John MacArthur, though not his particular views on Christian political activism. But during the COVID lockdowns, And when his Bible college was sued by the state of California, I think, he certainly understood the importance of having government do what's right in God's eyes. And so for that, listen, tip of the hat, we don't have to agree on everything within the body of Christ. John MacArthur is a man of integrity and is a fine gospel preacher. But I am delighted to hear him say something
What he's
like
saying
that.
here is that government has a role. The role isn't theological. It won't save you, and there's a lot of things government doesn't do very well. But one of the things it's tasked with doing is protecting its citizens. It's supporting good and punishing or denying evil.
Right. It's right out of Romans 13. I wrote a couple of articles for our monthly magazine, The Stand magazine, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that, where I did one article on Romans 13, which is when government serves God, and then Revelation 13, talking about the first beast out of the sea, when government serves Satan, to compare the fact that there is Romans 13, Revelation 13, there are two ways this can go with government. And it's a gradient, obviously. There's a lot in between those two, but I absolutely agree with John MacArthur here.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show when you have someone who's held previous views, that, and they've kind of come around and realized what's at stake. I think that just demonstrates the state that our nation is in and what people's views of where we're at are. It's not we're not in a good place at all. You mentioned the duty of government. Government is lapsed on that. Our government has lapsed on that duty for some time, and not only is it lapsed on its God-given duties of protecting its people and punishing evil, it's actually doing the opposite. It's glorifying evil.
Flip those,
yeah, and enforcing evil even to
Right.
an extent on its own.
And
on its own
punishing what
people.
God considers to be good.
Yes, and punishing godliness.
Yeah.
So I think
And I have to
people
have
realize
to
it.
believe that the radical left would go even further down that road if they could. Like
Absolutely they
any
would.
fascist government, or communist government, they would. When Tim Wildman says they'd put us in concentration camps if they could get away with it, there are at least some on the radical left that would do that.
Yeah.
I want to know when I'm going to meet Stan, the guy that the magazine's named after.
Oh, the Stand.
Stan.
Did I say Stan?
I thought you said Stan magazine. So I want to meet him.
Stan magazine.
I've heard about him for so long.
Well, he's played a big part in my life, just like that. Stan the man, I call him. All right, folks, that's all the time we have. I think we had some good discussions here. Hope it was helpful to you. As listen, it's not easy. We understand that here to oftentimes extrapolate from the scriptures to understand how in 2024 we are to interact with government and culture. That's not easy. We understand that. It's difficult, but we hope we are helping you to find your place and what you're supposed to do. Anyway, more great programming directly ahead on American Family Radio. You've been listening to today's issues. Lord willing, we'll see you right back here tomorrow.